So I do get, okay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining this morning's event. We're just going to briefly wait here for a couple of seconds to let everybody in that is in the waiting room right now. So thank you for your patience. I'm just going to hang out here for a couple of seconds, and I can see the tally going up for all of our guests. So a big welcome to everybody as you're joining us from the waiting area. So we'll just be here for a few more seconds. Okay, great. So good morning again and welcome. Hi from wherever in the world you are right now. I'd like to welcome you all to today's presentation, introducing BlueCallom Neuro Innovation Management Software. During today's event, we're going to share why we're in business, where we want to take it, and how BlueCallom will make a major difference in innovation. My name is Cleo Dan, and I'm a product manager here at BlueCallom. We're going to get started with the webinar very shortly, but first I'd like to run through some quick housekeeping items. There's no need to take any screenshots. We'll be recording the webinar and making it available to you in the next couple of days. And secondly, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to leave us a comment or a question in the chat or Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address all of your questions at the end of our program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our key panelist, Axel Schulze. He is founder and CEO of the BlueCallom Group and chairman of the World Innovations Forum Foundation. Axel started and successfully exited 4 companies, the biggest reaching $5 billion in revenue, the second close to $1 billion. Axel is a published author and patent holder. In 2015, listed in the global 100 most influential startup accelerators. In 2008, he won the San Francisco Entrepreneur Award. In 2006, he chaired the SaaS Channel Committee at SIIA, the leading trade association for the software industry in the US. He was also an early advisor at LinkedIn in 2003, spending the majority of his business life in Silicon Valley. Most recently, Axel has been on a quest to discover how the brain creates and composes and processes ideas, and how some of these ideas can go on to disrupt entire industries. So with that said, I'll hand the presentation over to Axel.
All right, thank you very much, Cleo, and also from my side, good morning, good afternoon. Let's see, yeah, morning and afternoons mostly. So I'm actually very happy. It's an interesting and important day for us. BlueCallom was founded in October officially, sort of as its own and legal entity, even though we started already early this year with our idea of helping people innovate in a very different way. It started with a question, hey, Axel, you started 4 companies. And there was one more disruptive than the other, and these were all innovative companies. And that's what you're known for. Where did you get these ideas from? And I had these questions oftentimes. And so I always said the same answer, it just popped up, think, open-minded, think outside the box, think bold, think big. I mean, the typical answers a quote unquote visionary person would say. But one person actually came up to me last year or 2 years ago in Vietnam saying, Axel, I need to understand how you think. Tell me step by step. And that clearly threw me off. I mean, I could not tell them how this is done. And I told him, I really don't know. And I was digging up the internet backwards, forwards. There was no answer how are ideas created? I asked friends and colleagues, peers, other innovative people, interviewed a couple in, sort of our old home in Silicon Valley, but there was no other answer than think bold, think big, think outside the box, and so forth. There was no recipe of how to do that. And this was frustrating for me. And so we thought we got to find out, we try to reverse engineer our own thinking. And that didn't lead to anything, and said, okay, I mean, yeah, it's probably one of these phenomenons of our mind, of our brain, because that's what we know. I mean, it starts up here. And then I stumbled over a TED talk from a guy by the name of Dr. David Eagleman from Stanford University, explaining how how thoughts are created, and how those who have any kind of anomaly in the brain basically are, disabled in certain ways. And I thought, okay, thought, idea, isn't that actually the same? And it was a radical shift over, I would say, 3 months, understanding sort of the principles of that part of neuroscience, looking into the brain about thinking. I had learned a lot about learning and thinking, and ideation is pretty much the same. And I learned one thing, that humans are not creative at all. I thought, okay, you don't know me. But that was the start of a journey that I honestly would have never expected. So this is where we are today. We're a team of roughly 20. About 10 are actually in what we call sort of the inner circle, the leadership team, the guys and girls who started right from the beginning with us. And we developed a bold vision that was actually never meant to be, that we want to transform the act of innovation to the focused part of any business. I mean, we know that humans have this gift of creativity and innovation, and let's not discuss whether we are creative or not, but we have this gift of coming up with new ideas about something that actually helps to make this world a better place. And we have this saying, let's make the world a better place for I don't know how long. And so what we started to do has become an amazing journey. And so I'd like to share a little bit of this journey. When I start with who we are, so that we have sort of the current here and now point, BlueCallom became actually a neuro innovation management software company. So nIMS, innovation management software, is out there. Neuro innovation is obviously something new, it's different. And I always hated to be different in order to be different. But what we're doing here is profoundly different from anything else we did or understood about innovation and innovation management. So there is the concept of ideas and innovation are no serendipity, is not by accident. We just have not the situation that ideas pop up, or even more, that our brain creates a new idea that nobody knew about. And this is all of a sudden, it's brand new, and it's radical, it's innovative, and it's disruptive, and what have you. This is not the case in no situation ever. From the very beginning, 300,000 years ago, when we developed the spear, we did not have this by accident. And the other thing is that getting our brain sort of a little bit the arms around it, and how the ideas are composed, then we come to this conclusion: there is no more conventional brainstorming, no hoping for disruptive ideas. There are no random experimentation. And this is where we are today. We started our beta test yesterday. On the right-hand side, you see basically a software application that is a digital canvas, which looks a little bit, like a canvas on the one side, but a little bit weird because we have lots of people there, all in one of the same fields. We have navigation elements and ratings and rankings and likes and what have you. I'll come to this a little bit further. But what's also interesting, the very first mock-up that we built, we thought, okay, how can we get this new method of ideation into the world? where instead of we pick one or two or three or four ideas from a brainstorming session, we're actually working with hundreds of ideas simultaneously. And we're completely, as humans, overwhelmed with doing something like that. We realized we need to have an output at the end of the innovation session that is for a management team of utmost relevance, because otherwise they would not continue to invest in innovation labs and innovation activities. And so we started actually with a dashboard, and that what you see here is a little bit different than what we have today, but not much. Now, the question we ask ourselves when we were considering building something like that, how relevant is innovation? I mean, are we in a mainstream situation where everybody innovates and we're coming up with new ideas, or is that, you know, on an early stage, and where are we? And so I learned once from a very smart man, you know, if you want to predict the future, you simply look into the past, then you draw a trajectory and you get there. And I thought, okay, that's pretty easy. I pretty much used this mechanism all my life. I know that futurists use it, and I thought, yeah, it's pretty cool. And so this is where we are today. I mean, we started with, I think, very down here is the spear, and then we had bow and arrow and plow and houses and wagons and steam engines and so forth. And so when we look into what is built on what, then we realize that there is no way to have created the internet about 2000 years ago, because all the underlying innovations that needed to happen before that obviously did not happen. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting development. So health analysis, a train, a TV, a fridge. There was a lot of technology before the fridge. I mean, the very first one was a cabinet, and a wooden cabinet, and you put in some ice. But then people generated dry ice, then people started to build technology around it until we got to the fridge. And so the question is, how would this actually evolve? And so we try to simulate sort of based on what we have today, and knowing that every 3 minutes a new patent is filed, and knowing that one innovation typically sparks 3 to 5 others, then in 10 years, it will look like this. So innovation will explode, not because we want it or because we can, because this is the dynamic of innovation. If there is a good idea and somebody sees it and gets basically inspired and saying, well, if this is working that way, maybe we can do something else and something more, something better, something different. And so this is not, you know, innovation in accordance to a BlueCallom or something like that. That is the reason why universities, governments, agencies, consultants, executives of all kinds of organizations are so extremely focused on how can we as a country, we as an organization, we as a company, we as a little startup, how can we build a truly innovative product? And so that was a driver for us to say, okay, we found reasons to believe that we know and understand how disruptive ideas are created. So let's basically help these guys to make it happen. And this is what we are today. Before I go into the details, I want to make one thing clear. We try to define innovation, and this may not be the final wording here. I have to say that too. But I was stunned when I looked into, internet. I mean, in general, but into all kinds of sources, whether it's old libraries or so. Innovation has very many meanings, and because innovation, or particularly groundbreaking innovation or disruptive innovation, is such a brutal goal for people that we never can do that, but we want to do innovate too. So people developed all kinds of shades of innovation. But for us, innovation is the introduction of a groundbreaking change in the way people do business or their personal lives, and bring that successfully to market and distribute it globally. That is innovation. Everything else is improvement. So we're not talking about improving the next generation product or building a next generation product or proving a behavior or proving something. That would not be innovation. And so everything we do and everything we think is in this context. And to do that, we need to be able to measure our effort in order to manage the results. That became or is becoming sort of a mantra, a kind of directive guideline for our activities. Because as long as we cannot measure our effort, we cannot manage it. And there's this old saying, if you can measure your work, you can manage it. And if you can manage it, it gets done. And so the innovation problem is basically today we cannot measure it. So therefore we cannot manage it. And therefore it doesn't get done. So we need to find ways to measure and then manage and then get the innovation done. And this is, again, you saw before. So there are two key elements. On the left-hand side, you see the innovation journey map. In the real world, you now see, wherever we are on this journey, and it looks a little bit different today. On the right-hand side, you see the team composition, and that is one hypercritical aspect of innovation. If you have one of the same type, only engineers or only marketing people or only scientists or only whatever, monoculture is the death of innovation. You have to have a diverse team, and there's many arguments before it. I don't want to go into the details. The other one is obviously time management, budget, but then here on the left-hand side, and this is still one of the old versions, the positive innovation verification. If we can verify by customers and business partners that what we are having is of utmost importance to them, we better stop. I mean, very clearly. We need to be able to verify that our innovation is an innovation in a market that exists today and can be basically satisfied. And if people say, you're far too early, we would love to see this, but probably in the next 10 years. Well, your innovation has no value because the value is created in the market. And if there's no market acceptance yet, the innovation has no value. So put it into the drawer and come back. Or do what the smarter startups do. You look for early adapters, people who recognize the value and are more than happy to actually try it out. And it's very easy to find these companies. It's basically every one of the top-notch leading edge companies are almost automatically early adapters. They're almost always far above and beyond, the mainstream companies. So a couple of these things are interesting for innovators, and we come back to our ideas, and innovation is no serendipity and Earth is no disk. Our current problem, quite honestly, is that we need to speak with people who understand that innovation is actually a process, a natural process, a natural flow in our mind, very much like certain things in other worlds are becoming or have become natural processes like magic. Earth was always a disk until I think it was 1600 something, when Pythagoras calculated that Earth must be a sphere. And it took a long time. And even today, I mean, you probably heard of this flat Earth movement. And there's tens of thousands of people jump on it and said, yeah, probably true. I think I like it because that's more logical for me that Earth is flat. I mean, we know it's not, but still today, I mean, 400, 500 years later, people believe this could be true. And so we will have a while until we convince people, or they get convinced otherwise, that our thinking and our learning is a natural, understandable, motivationable process in our mind, in our brain. And with that, we came to the conclusion that neuro innovation management is something where we are planning to have disruptive ideas. And that is for probably 99% of people today still like, come on, you cannot plan an idea. The idea still pops up. And we say, no, it does not. We have evidence that it's not, but still it's very hard to believe. We're in this dilemma as a young startup. And since we don't even believe we can serve the entire market of innovation companies or innovative people today in one shot anyway, so we go simply with the flow, with the evolution of those who realize, okay, maybe there is something. And the thing is that if we're looking at ideation, okay, I have a great idea, which in many cases indeed comes up almost like magic. But today we know it doesn't. There is a source and there's a reason. And if there is, then we can stimulate that source and we can stimulate that reason. And so instead of beginning with ideas and then building something, that's what most people do today, we actually step back 4 steps. We try to find out what our innovation opportunity is. And this is where most people today, most companies, most executives are willing to spend millions in finding out what the competition does, looking what the competition is possibly doing, and then trying to find if there is an edge what they're doing right now, because possibly they had one of these brain sparks and we don't want to miss the boat, and therefore we need to analyze exactly what's going on. If they would spend the same money by talking to their existing customers, what their possible brain sparks are, what their dreams are, that would be very simple, would cost the same, but would be 100% more effective, because this is where the innovation needs to go. It's into their dreams. And if innovation is not creating ideas out of nowhere, but on past experiences, even more so the right people. Now, if we get this from our customers, we can actually, for the first time, draw an innovation strategy, which we don't have today. There is no innovation strategy. I mean, we're waiting for this accidental brain spark. So, and where do we go with that? If we don't know what the idea will be, we cannot create a strategy for an end point because we don't know what it is. So we have to wait. So we're running innovation labs with only one strategy, hoping that we will have some innovative ideas and hoping that we can build it and then hoping that the market will accept it. I mean, it's a hope, hope, hope strategy. Now, when we have a strategy, we can say, okay, what do we need for, getting to this goal? I mean, we discovered here where we have to go, we make a strategy, then we hire a team, then we analyze the needs and the dreams of whatever the opportunity looks like. Now in great details, we go basically back to our customers and say, okay, what are your needs? What are your dreams? And particularly dreams is key, because if they're dreaming up a future, why not build it for them? They usually cannot do it because they're in a different business, but we are in the business of building their dreams. If we go back 12,000 years ago, as you can see, I love the past as well as the future. 12,000 years ago was the so-called agricultural revolution. We were understanding that when we seed corns or nuts in a field, in a kind of in a managed way, we can grow more corn than we can ever eat ourselves. So that's good. So we have more corn. If there's a drought, maybe we can use it. But we actually produce so much corn that we couldn't even if there is 2 years of drought, we still would have corn. So what do? We sell it. And then not everybody wanted to have a cornfield. But there were people who said, oh, okay, this is not my work, but okay, I have to do it to get fed. I have to hunt or gather and, but 12,000 years ago, a couple people realized, okay, if I build for them basically, a shed where they put their corn in, they may like that and they can pay me with corn. I'd love to build a shed. Somebody else said, okay, I can actually, if I have a little bit more time, I can cut metal and actually build a plow so that they can, grind through earth much better than do this all by hand. And so we begin to specialize 12,000 years ago. Now here's actually the same thing. If somebody has an idea and we want to find what their dreams are, we will be basically a rather mechanical dream builder. We're not the idea creator even as an innovation management team. We're the dream builder. If they have a dream, we can make it a reality because we know how our mind is actually composing ideas and stimulate the composition process. We can build what they dream. If we can build what they dream, they would be happy. And we're again, one step ahead of the competition. We build a disruptive moment in, which means we disrupt the market. We get the ideal validation of what we thought would be great. And then, and only then, we actually ask for financing. Now, today it's different. We start with the idea, we prototype, we pivot, all these terms and words, and we consume already lots of money with not knowing where to go. It's actually ridiculous, isn't it? So when we look back, and some of you have been in webinars of ours before, have seen this picture, and I just want to do a recap. And you can, if you haven't been on one of our webinars, you can see all the recordings. This is basically an artist drawing of how our brain looks inside. You have heard the word neurons, you have heard the word neuron cells, you have heard the word neuron fibers or axis, maybe even, where all the neurons get connected. We have one thing, and this is neuron cells, the so-called organelles. If we would open it up, it's full of chemicals. And every signal that comes into our brain through our eyes, through our ears, through our senses, gets basically one way or the other stored in these cells. And this capsules and this brain is not able to come up with an idea saying, I built a platform for people who want to have driving a car and others who want to actually get a ride instead of a taxi, and we built an app and do that. There is no capsule in the world who can do this. It is not working that way. But we learned that every new idea ever created was composed from previous impressions. So these capsules can connect with each other. And if this is, I'd say, the taxi capsule, and this is the driver capsule, and this is a rider capsule, somebody like Travis, the founder from Uber, could come up with, why not, because we have cars, we understand cars, we have car drivers, we have people who want to have a car, want to have a ride. We have all this. Why don't we recompose this thing and build an app around it, and then we call it Uber, and we go for it. In this picture of Uber is not a single piece, not a single variance, not a single aspect new. It's just recomposed of everything that we have in real life. You go to Airbnb, there's a platform, there are apartments, there are rooms, there are people who want to rent a room, and so forth. People who don't want to be in a hotel because it's narrow and it's sort of one box next to the other. They want to have a little bit of different private life, and therefore they prefer something else. And you go from one innovation to the next, and I can say 4 companies, 4 innovative concepts, 4 times that process. Also in my companies, no matter how big they grew, there was not a single thing that I created in its literal sense. It's basically, I see this and see that, and then, okay, if we can do this way, why don't we give it at least a try? And so if we come to the conclusion that our mind is actually composing new ideas from past experiences, and we understand this is just a chemical process, then we also can realize, okay, and this is an innovation in itself, why don't we stimulate these activities that are happening in our mind based on the facts that when did they stimulate, or what stimulate the ideas in the first place? How long does it take to get there? What has happened? How do I get experiences? How do I get these impressions and timelines? And multiple people do this together, and what worked and what didn't work. We don't need to understand this chaos in our brain. We only need to understand the behavior. And that is one of the clues to understanding innovation. We don't want to become brain researchers or neuroscientists, but we needed the neuroscientists to get this idea. And you all heard the word applied science. There are people who are the scientists, and there are the other people who apply it in the real world. We apply neuroscience to the innovation process. This is the brain on the lower right-hand side, and none of us on Earth, including the neuroscience, has a complete understanding of how this works. Here's a chip, 6.9 billion transistors on it. It's actually a chip that sits in one of those mobile phones, smartphones. There's not a single human who understands the entire functionality of this one chip with its 6.9 billion transistors. There's not one person who can explain that this transistor does that. And we don't know, and we don't need it. We need to understand how this works, not how the chips work. We don't need to understand how the brain works. We need to understand the behavior of the brain. And that is what we started to do basically 1.5 years ago. And this is the result of the company. And so initially we were a little bit reluctant, I have to say, to play with this word neuroideation. And then we took it even to neuro innovation management, because the neuro thing is like, we need something robust, concrete, what we understand, and not the neuro thing. We started with neuro ideation because this was clearly the shift and the change of the entire innovation life cycle. But then we started to think about the actual steps, and we realized when we start on the left-hand side with the innovation opportunity discovery, if we understand how the brain works and how their dreams of the customers get composed based on their experience, we also realize that we never get as deep as they are into the situation without talking to them, and not just having a casual conversation, but actually trying to analyze their emotional and their factual feedback. And this helped us to make actually sense out of neuroscience also in the innovation opportunity discovery. Because there will be people who say, my dreams, I don't have any dreams. My dream is retirement. And then you ask when they retire, what is your dream? Maybe go back to what I was, because it was actually pretty cool. But other people will tell you, in my dream, this application or this product or this machine or this office flow would look like that. But I know it's not possible. Well, impossible doesn't exist, because we cannot create something that is impossible. We can only create in our mind things that are possible because they come from past experiences. And when we get used to it, still like Earth, it's still hard to believe that we're living on a sphere and people who are below there don't fall into space because of gravity and so on, So we've realized that there are a couple of things where neuroscience helps us in the process. Now, when we realized, okay, so that is important, we also clearly realized without the understanding of our neuro thing, so to speak, innovation strategy would not be possible. Like I said earlier, we could not predict an outcome of something that we don't know how to create it in the first place. Then the next is the innovation dream team. For the last, I would say, 250 years, research and development, sort of the precursor to the group of innovation, was done by experts. But we realized that experts, if you have 5 or 3 or 2, even 1 or 10 or 100, you have only more of the same. No big deal. If you mix up the team, very much like any startup, with very different perspectives, with very different experiences, that makes a huge difference. And so the Innovation Dream Team Assembly, again, was influenced by neuroscientific discoveries. We go further into the deep understanding of what the opportunity is. We want to understand needs and I want to understand dreams. So needs is that what we do today with surveys, even though it doesn't work that well, but theoretically we could improve without innovation. We could improve the survey in very intelligent interviews with very good questions. We get to the needs. We would not get to dreams. And here's why. Their dreams, very much like our neuro ideation process. Our brain does not release very deep, founded, complex relationships to ideas that are not obvious. And obvious ideas are always created. We can pop up with obvious ideas and we think we're very creative. Every brainstorm meeting pops up with obvious ideas. 30 minutes later, you have a couple very cool ideas and check, done, super, yeah. But none of them, not a single one, is a disruptive, innovative idea. Those come when you go deeper and deeper and deeper in your mind and get more and more and more connections. But that would consume so much energy that your brain would actually shut down in the meantime. And so we need more time. And we discovered that if we go back to our clients after the needs analysis, but tell them, can we have another meeting in 2 or 3 days? I want to get to the dreams, but I don't want to, hold off too long. They may come back and say, I have a little bit of time. So if you like, I'm sorry, I have my schedule. You don't want to hear their dreams in the same meeting. Let them and their brain work for 48 hours because whether they like it or not, it does it. And you know yourself, if you have a problem or something challenging or something that bugs you, you continuously come back. Even if something simple like, I don't remember the name of this artist, you keep coming back and trying to look for it until you realize, okay, I can't, forget it. You sleep next morning, there it is. Because your brain has time to look their way or its way and not like you want, that doesn't work. You want an idea, it doesn't work. Let it do it. And so also this is influenced by neuroscience. And you can see the rest. Disruptive moment, it helps. Ideas from whatever process coming needs validation. You need to know whether this greatest idea you ever had heard and seen is actually working in the market. And also here, there's a couple of questions, a couple of things you need to understand, a couple of things you need to know to get actually a validation that is crisp and clear so that finance understands it. Now, for a long time, finance was not understood on our side as something that fits into the neuro schema, but we had one big problem. More than 90% of enterprises do not finance radical different ideas. The question is why? I mean, everybody's pounding on getting disruption or innovation, but 90% are not financed. What's wrong? And we realized what is wrong. It's wrong because the CFO and the CEO or whoever in the world you pick, the most intelligent person on earth would probably reject the idea if it comes to putting in 20, 50 or 100 million to fund it. And the reason is because they don't fully understand when somebody comes in with appointment, knowing that there will be something very cool, and they hear within 60 minutes what their idea is, and now you should finance it. No way. And we came to the conclusion that transforming an idea from one brain to the next is difficult. And I think since we I think since we know Frankenstein, and even before that, we had this idea, can we not, connect our brain with their brain and what I think moves over there? And I think we found this way. We actually found 3 key APIs that we needed to work on: eye, mouth, ear. It's so darn simple. And if you look at these KPIs, APIs to our brain, they're so perfectly built over 5 million years that we can't build it much better. So there we said, okay, if we take our CFO, who finally is also responsible for financing innovation, we take him here and say, okay, this is the outcome of the opportunity discovery. We just wanted to let you know. 3 minutes, not more, not 5, not 10, definitely not an hour. You need 3 minutes to make a presentation, use the screen and say, okay, need 5 minutes, 10:05 till 10:10, and we're done. Now you take them to the next step. This is our strategy, how we want to use that discovery. 3 minutes and not more. And you do this innovation dream team assembly. This is what the dream team is. Actually fulfill our strategy. Okay, 3 minutes. So with 3, 6, 9, and so on, you have less than an hour already used, but over time stretch of probably 6 to 10 weeks. And you prep their mind in a transition or transformation from one step to the next to finally understand what you actually try that they're supposed to finance. And that actually works. Why? Proof? Yes, no, absolutely. It works in probably 10,000 cases where venture capitalists finance the ideas of startups step by step, staged financing. And so again, once we understand how our machine up there works, we can deal with it. And the rest is easy, so I can just click through. And so neuroscience has changed the entire life cycle of an innovation for us. And there's a methodical innovation success management, and that goes through canvases. Most people know canvases, and those who don't will definitely help to make it understandable. So as you can see, the UI is completely different. We don't have the classical, UI structure anymore. And the reason is that also our mind is actually negotiating between the right and the left brain half. And that is how the canvases are actually structured. And continuously in every session, in every episode of the canvas, KPIs. If we cannot deliver success pattern, KPIs to management, we would not wonder why they don't finance us. But if we can, and they agree that these values are values to the strategy of the company, it's a completely new game. Now, we started with first customers last year. It was a big airline company from Asia, and was amazing experience for us. And we realized, okay, there's so many ideas, and if we don't use the classical brainstorming and then pick 5, but actually work with a lot, we need technology. Then earlier this year in January, we actually helped a large pharmaceutical company to train 600 managers from around the world in innovative thinking. But we knew that this was not to build new drugs or to build new material. It's actually an internal need for renewing the organization. And that helped us to structure organizational innovation, our field 4 here. We know from our own experience that business model innovation is probably one of the most robust, very hard to copy, and most successful model of innovation today. And so we had, for the longest time, actually 4 models: product innovation, experience innovation. This is not only customer experience, but it can be entertainment and so on, which is different than product innovation, the business model innovation, and the organizational innovation. And then we ran into what we call supra enterprises, the biggest of the biggest. And we realized there is a profound challenge, even though everybody wants to innovate. The team, managers, the executives, the market, the shareholders, but the poor CEO, I mean, even though not very poor, of course, but this person has to decide and has to manage shareholders again, the board, maybe union, all the political and other infrastructures and influences that actually work on what do we innovate and work on, no, we can't do this. Sorry, you can't do that. Now, this is a total no-no. There's no way to do this. The rules and the regulation would prohibit this, that, and this and that. So we came to the conclusion that we need to actually structural innovation for those kind of organizations, and that includes, by the way, governments. You know, if you look into Europe, in Europe, we're looking for innovation. Every single government looks for innovation. Interestingly enough, every single innovation that pops up is basically stopped. There are cities with no Ubers, there are cities with no Airbnb, there are cities that don't want the IKEA there, they want it well far out there, they don't want this, they don't want that. So if we don't change our structure, and this is indeed governmental or supra enterprises, then there will be no innovation. I mean, we get funded in Germany, for instance. I just recently heard there was a company funded with 100 million and another, this was the first round, by the way, and another who just got 43 for something else. But the funding came from US investors. And as funding has a tendency to get more funding, so these companies are no longer European companies, they're US companies, but sit and stay in Europe. But the ownership is the US, taxes US, export US. And since export is a key function of our growth and our prosperity, if we take innovation out of this equation, we see this in 25 years, because that is sort of the lead time of innovative exports. To the contrary, if you look at South Korea, it took 25 years to turn this thing upside down. It basically started in the 1990s. There was, I think 1990s was sort of a turning point. In 1980s, South Korea, believe it or not, got funds from North Korea, development funds. It was the poorest country in Asia. And today it's the most developed country in Asia, you know, even compared with China, and it's one of the most developed countries in the world. What did it do? Export. And innovation export is basically what contributes to the prosperity of a nation. And no export, no prosperity. So what we built to help thought leaders get together and exchange, funny enough, there is not much going on right now. And so we decided, and this was inspired by one of our partners, so to speak, we worked with, and I said, you know, could you guys make a sort of a roundtable for people like us, innovation managers, to get together, but just the we, not kind of a big event and so on. I said, you know what, great idea. So we will have the first BlueCallom customer exchange on February 5, customers only innovation managers, only people with the same topic to really exchange and compare notes. Our executive dashboard, which I mentioned at the beginning, has morphed in the meantime, has adapted from up here to down here. So it's going on, but also there, this is probably the part where we need to work on for the next 2 to 3 years at least, to get basically the best dashboard in the world for innovation managers. And we're collecting, obviously, through beta tests and so on, all the ideas that we can get. To get a little bit more down to the product. So very clearly, there's a lot of methodical aspects, but we put this into a product and into technology. It's a cloud-based application, enterprise grade. I mean, the architecture we used in the previous company, so we know it holds for about 2 million users, and I'm pretty sure we get it to 10 million and more down the road. $180 per user per month for team members, meaning everybody in a company that uses it, the innovation team, the executives, and so on, pay the fee. Customers and business partners are free right now. We want to stimulate, get your customers onto the innovation process. Open innovation is no longer a jazzy kind of good idea because it integrates people, it's better. Open innovation became a must when we understood that our experience is limited to our past experiences. The ideation process is built on past experience. So who has the best possible past experience in what we are innovating for is the customer, of course. So we need people like customers and business partners in the innovation process to come to groundbreaking innovation. And obviously implementation support. This is, I would say, no news to us. We did implementations and software as a service for years in Silicon Valley. So we will continue, and we will continue also improving here. And training is something we're obviously also have. And we start with our training program in January. So January 25, the first BlueCallom Essentials class. And we do two things. One is public classes, so everybody can join, 2,600 euro per person. Or if a company says, well, we want to have our own, then we have a fixed price, 16,800, and they can put in up to 25 people. If it's 28, it's also okay. But we want to have it in a contained size that we can actually manage with our team, meaning with our instructors. We're both are coming actually from a university and help the education process. The levels are staged one on top of the other. We start with the essentials. We then train the specialists so that they're being really good at taking the method and applying it in the application. And we also realized managing such a team with everything that the application provides, we need a training offering for innovation managers, and they're the ones who then run teams in an innovation project. Also here, methods like what we were talking about through our innovation journey map, but there are other methods, and this is the methods from entrepreneurship. In most innovation labs we've seen today, people seem to have all time on earth. No startup has all time on earth. There's huge pressure from the investors to get it done, get it into the market as fast as possible, grow as fast as possible, and then basically take a market in storm. And if you don't, you will lose it. And we see this one by one by one. And so enterprises now, once they have a methodology, they can actually institute a manageability, and that means time is of essence, because there is always somebody waiting for jumping into a market that is wide open. And with that, I can only say reach far for the stars. Everybody, innovation is not a special topic for special people. You all are special because you won against probably, I don't remember exactly, 100 million sperms, and the outcome is you. Very special. And we have all the gift of combining billions of past experiences in every millisecond or every 20 millisecond in the sleep. When you sleep a little bit less is an experience, and we can combine this because we all have 86 billion neurons. We all have a 3-pound weight of brain. The only difference between one and the other is how are you raised? Are you raised like, don't do this, don't do that, always do this, follow the rules, and so on? It's a little bit tougher because your neural pathways that basically stimulate your day-to-day routine are much deeper ingrained, and your routine is more important to you. For others, routine is less important, but we all have the same brain. And so we all can innovate. We just have to possibly unlearn a couple of routines. And with that, I want to give it back to Cleo and wonder if we have a couple of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Axel, for this wonderful presentation. So we have 3 questions, and as Axel mentioned, if you think of any questions during this Q&A session, just go ahead and either chat them or submit them in the Q&A box. So the first question, or 2 questions in a comment rather. The first question is, disruptive innovation is a term that can be understood differently. What is your definition of disruptive innovation?
Yeah, so the term disruptive innovation was actually coined some couple of years ago by a guy by the name of Clayton from the, I think, Harvard University. And he just described it as the act of an innovation that disrupts a market or market segment. So it changes everything. And we're very much following the term disruptive innovation because all the highly successful innovators actually influenced an entire market. And disruption is for some people almost a bad word because it also means you kind of almost destroy certain things or a certain behavior at least. But evolution as a concept of nature is always preferring sort of the evolutionary aspect or living or being or process over the existing, maintained, and basically not growing process. And so disruptive innovation is when somebody builds something, and this can be a service, a product, this can be even a method that changes the way people do things, very much like I described innovation in the beginning. Now, Cleo, you're muted.
Yep, that's the new 2020 norm, isn't it? Just muting yourself on Zoom. So our next question is if our software works also on mobile, or is mobile in the roadmap?
Okay, so it works already on mobile. We tested it ourselves. It is not a mobile app, a native app that works sort of specifically for mobile. We're following a new trend that says web first, and it has not anything to do with being lazy on mobile, but it has to do with when you look into our, let me see if I can real quickly get I think I cannot. Let me go back just a few slides. When you look at one of these canvases, the beauty of the canvas is not that it's different. It's also not that you have all these little boxes with information. The beauty of the canvas is that you have a certain type of information on the left-hand side, a certain type on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you typically have the research or, things from the background. On the right-hand side, you have things that you want to do, that you want to inspire, that you want to create, that you want to deal with. And in the middle, you have something that concludes the sort of the negotiation between the left and the right side. And that's exactly how the brain works. And over time, you will get used to the left and right and see this is, okay, no, we have said this. Is this working still here? Yeah. This goes so fast. You cannot do this in a linear process when you go step by step by step by step. You always have to scroll. It's a little bit a behavioral change, but you cannot, at least not today, emulate this on a mobile phone. So therefore, for us was the result of innovation being successful and fast more important than the way to use it on a device that simply doesn't allow that. And so we know that everybody looks for mobile, and we have almost grown up with it, so we all use it. But there are things the same like with a CAD system. You have your drawings and your charts. You cannot really do this nicely on a mobile. Of course you can, but it's probably much less effective than on a big screen. So, but we will do a mobile version probably, I would say, in a year, but today you can test it out. I mean, it's fully responsive design, so things collapse and go horizontally and so forth. So you can use it on a mobile phone or on a tablet.
Okay, great. So our last question for now, unless anybody submits something while we're answering it, is your software more for companies with existing innovation processes or for companies looking to implement a process?
So it's actually for both. The companies who have existing processes have obviously the problem of unlearning a few things, because the existing processes are built on hope that we have an idea, hope that we can actually build it, hope that the market will like it, and we work through a different process. Those have done yet. That is obviously easy. They start from scratch and they can apply the methodology. However, we ourselves have worked with design thinking, with that model for years, because this was the only thing that actually seemed to work for us. And so what we did, and one of the people from SAP who was driver for the D school at SAP actually joined our advisory board 2 days ago. So we will build, and we have already started to build, a version of what we call an extended version of design thinking. So if somebody uses that, it will be possible too. The application, I mean, the whole canvas and the whole structure, the technology behind it, is capable also to take on other designs or other methods. We were thinking about a blue ocean, or, I mean, there's a variety of innovation methodologies that we could apply here. The question for us is simply, is it worth the time and help people to transit, or is it not? So at this stage, I would be able to commit for design thinking, yes, as we call it, extended design thinking, and other methods possibly in the future.
Sounds good. We have one more question. How do we sign up for the beta program? And I can go ahead and answer that for you. You can head to bluecallom.com/beta test. And I'll go ahead and copy this link as well in the chat so everybody can take a look. But we would love to have you if you're interested. So that is all of the questions, it looks like. And so with that said, thank you so much for joining today. And we hope that you enjoyed this presentation. And we also invite you to connect with us on social media in LinkedIn and also on Twitter and Facebook. So on behalf of our team, thanks again for attending today. I'll put the link for the beta test in the chat room. And with that said, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, Cleo. Thanks, everybody, from my side, too. Stop share. How do I leave?